All right, family. We live. Sarasun SETI memberships. Y'all already know what it is. We got that work today. We're gonna be putting it down. We're gonna be talking about the mighty ancient Egyptian navy that nobody want to talk about. Nobody want to talk about the greatness of this navy and how far back, you know, the science, of naval warfare, naval maritime dominance on these seas and on these oceans, how far back it go. You see, yeah, that the Egyptian and Kushite, obviously, through the facts of similarities in much of the cultures, that cannot be pawned off as just a coincidence. These is advanced technologies that's shared by the Kushite empire all over the world. You see megalithic structures, various rituals and ceremonies. You see that leave no doubt that our people's hand was all over the planet. You see, and our people had mastered starting on the Nile River. You see, starting on the Nile River, they began to master shipbuilding, starting very small and then develop. But you talking about, you talking about the Africans and Kushites and Egyptians been on the Nile for tens of thousands of years. You see, tens of thousands of years, not thousands, tens of thousands of years. So they mastered the Nile River first. Okay, they mastered the Nile River first, and the Nile is not just a small river; it is the longest river in the world. So it's nothing to play with, especially that white Nile. No, the blue Nile, which is more fierce than the white Nile. But this is where they learn, you know, the early stages of navigations, maritime, administration on the Nile River, then going on to the Red Sea. Even then going on to the Red Sea. Mastering the Red Sea, going across. Starting down, especially where it's closest. When you think about how close Ethiopia is to Yemen, you see, so that area is close. So in the Red Sea is not that far across in any way. It's closer. It's a shorter route, I believe, than the Mediterranean. So so the Red Sea, mastering the Red Sea, and what you do is you skirt them coastlines. You see, that's the most safest way to do it. If you exploring and you don't, you skirt them coastlines and you make markers. You see as you move along, and when you get far enough where you think you need to turn back, you turn back. You see what I'm saying? But you put markers, and that's how you started. How they started to create maps. You get so far, you put a flag, you put something that's gonna mark your presence there. So when the next person come back, they see the marker, they know what it is. You see, and so that's how our people began to create these maps. But you can't, you had to have, you had to have serious naval, what they call naval architecture. You see, they call it naval architecture. I got it in here. Uh, and that's the art of making boats. You see, now the earliest evidence of a navy was the Narmer's pallet, which I brought up. Now I don't know if I have it here with me right now, but I should have had it in here. But you can look it up, the Narmer's pallet, and you'll see that there were ships on that pallet. And Narmer was the very first king. Aha. You see, 3100 to 3000 BC. They already had ships on the river, and not just ships. They were military ships because the Narmer's palette is depicting a war between the South and the North, and you see that they came down the river on boats. So they attacked by boat. You see, they're attacked by a boat. So it says archaeological finds at Abydos show boat burials, and I have those pictures. And those are the oldest boats that have ever been found on the planet. You see, you talking about 3,000. They already got boats, and as far as the burials and where they would put ships and boats next to the king's burial because the religious ritual of the king selling back to heaven. You see, just like Ra, the god Ra, where he travels on his solar arc, at midnight. He's symbolic of the sun, and you see him sailing along the celestial Nile, which is the Milky Way. And so the Pharaoh, upon his death, would take the same route ritual as the sun, and he would sail from his tomb, near the pyramid, and he would spiritually sail up the Nile into heaven by way of the Milky Way and become one with the great deities of the Nile Valley. So even the fact that the boats is in the burial rituals, you see what I'm saying? And that the deities, when you look up in the into, you know, the ceiling of Dendera and many of those Egyptian temples, you'll see the deities, they're sailing across the heavens. You see, so that show you that we were the most ancient people, even dealing with boats. And the crazy thing about it, at 3,000, 3,100 BC, is not another civilization on the planet. There's not another civilization nowhere on the planet, on no other continent. This is the oldest and first civilization to take root on this planet. So it says archaeological finds at Abydos show boat burials, real full-size wooden boats buried near royal tombs. These boats suggest Egypt already had organized shipbuilding and crews, likely used for both transport and warfare along the Nile. So and then number two, Pharaoh Sneferu, who fourth dynasty. You talking about? Let me blow that up just a little more. You got to be able to see that. Yeah, you got to be able to see that. Yeah, you got to be able to see that. So the Pharaoh Sneferu, who was the mighty Pharaoh, who was the father of Khufu, who has the largest pyramid on the planet. His grandson Khafra, Sneferu's grandson Khafra, and his great grandson uh, what's his name? Menkaure. So that's the third. That's his great grandson. So those are the great pyramid builders. But he is had a navy, a ship fleet of over 40 ships. So the Palermo stone, an ancient Egyptian record, says Sneferu built a fleet of 40 ships to trade or raid along the Mediterranean coast. This is considered the first recorded Egyptian navy in history. So they had ships, but the first recorded Egyptian navy in history was 2600 BC. So we're talking about a navy. You see, 40 ships. Talking about a navy. There's nowhere on the planet got no navy. The Sumerians was landlocked. I never heard of anything about them on no seas. You see, they didn't have that type of presence. But the Egyptians, so that just show you that they were already, in the Mediterranean. They were already on the islands of Crete, all through the Mediterranean. They had already went across to the other side. There's no Greece yet. There's no Rome yet. The Egyptian Cushites went to the other side of the Mediterranean and set up them nations that of Greece, and that was later. They was there was Nile Valley civilizations on that coast of the Mediterranean. So that's where you get, where Homer talk about the Iliad and the Odyssey, and they talk about the Trojan Wars, and they talk about the Titans and all of that. That's the Cushite Egyptians that's, in rule of that land, at the original rulers of the land. And it says here, number 3, Pepi the first, Pepi the second, 6th dynasty, 2300 to 2200 BC, Egyptian fleet sailed to Punt, likely the Horn of Africa, and Byblos for trade, showing long-range naval logistics. So not only were they going to Punt, the Horn of Africa, they were going to Byblos in Lebanon. That's today, I believe it's Syria. I believe it's Syria today. Or is it still, it might be still Lebanon. But so you talking about, man, you talking about a hell of a distance. You talking about 2300, 2200 BC. There is no civilizations. Sumeria would have been just getting started. They would have just been getting started. There is no Greece. There is no Rome. And they already been on the waterway. You see, 3100, they had a river fleet. You understand what I'm saying? It wasn't on the Red Sea. I don't know if but I believe they came upon the Lower Kemet by way of the Nile. But under Sennacherib, they on the seas now. They on the Red and the Mediterranean Sea. And they're going great distance, because you think from the Horn of Africa to Byblos, that's a long way. You see, that's thousands of miles in distance to be able to do something like that. So now you talking about, and you got to think, you talking about what shipbuilding is referred to as naval architecture. And then you got hydrodynamics, and that's how how you design the hull of that ship to where it cut through that water. You have to design that where, if you want a dynamic ship, you see what I'm saying? You had that. So that's what the hydrodynamics is, the design of the ship. You understand what I'm saying? Where it cut through that water, where you got a fast ship. And so maritime engineering, oceanography, you see mapping out them oceans, so the Africans were the first map makers, on that on maritime map makers. And so, and they had various ships. They had various ships, and we see which are, and you could tell it looks very similar to the Viking ships. You see the Phoenicians, and the Phoenicians are Africans too. And they developed, the Carthaginians and the Phoenicians had developed some very for the time, that which they were on the oceans, had developed some most, advanced ships of that day and age. They couldn't even be beat, because they were like shit. They were like the United States of goddamn military warfare when it came to them ships. And so they were so advanced, man, that people couldn't beat them out there on the water. It was just like, it was a no-go. You see, because they had developed such fast ships. They had certain type of ramming technologies. You see what I'm saying? Where they could, when they going so fast and then they run into them damn ships, they would crack them in half. Soon as they hit them, you see, sink it to sink them, and so, and then to be able to go and turn and shit, and they could come around, do a circle and shit, and come around behind your ass and ram you that way. So, the Africans, had the advanced technology on that water for a long time. The Romans end up, just like a lot of people do, end up getting a hold to some Carthaginian ships, and they reverse engineered the ship. They reverse engineered the ship, and that's how they got some of the technology. And so they were able to build them a fleet, and they were able to get out on the waterway and goddamn compete. And that was started to be the beginning of the end. You see, you know, it was started to be the beginning of the end for your Carthaginians, but the Egyptians even had this particular boat here. You see, this particular boat here, which was this has had ship suits, barge, you know, where they carry obelisks. Now you got to think, you talking about two obelisks, you know, and weighed a total, I think they was 350 tons apiece. So this goddamn barge can hold 1,000 tons. 1,000 tons on this barge, and they carved the stone up and put it, put it on the barge. And I believe how what was the length of that barge? The length of it was almost like 223 feet. Okay, the width of it was 72 feet, and the depth of it was 10 feet. Tonnage could carry around 1,000 tons, including the obelisks. You see? And so on that particular ship, each obelisk, it carried weighed roughly 320 to 350 tons and stood about 30 meters, 100 feet tall. 100 feet tall. So you talking about, man, they don't even talk about, how large these ships were, some of these ships that the Egyptians had. These, and the one guy, Thor Heyerdahl, he he proved that the Egyptians could come across the ocean by he had some brothers from Chad rebuild uh an ancient Egyptian ship. Now that ship was about this size. It wasn't one of the big ones. You see, it wasn't one of the big ones. It was let me see. It was more along this size of boat, but I think he used a reed. If I'm not mistaken, he used the reed boat. He didn't use a wooden boat. I think this one right here. This is also Hatshepsut. So at this time in 1500 BC, Hatshepsut built ships like this for an expedition to the land of Punt. These vessels were more than 80 feet long, and the square sail was drawn between 2 yards. So they was the first one with sails, and you talking about some technology versus somebody just out there rowing. They got sailboats and shit. You get in that goddamn wind, you taking the fuck off. You gone. You feel what I'm saying? And so, you talking about at that time, that's advanced technology. But, Thor Heyerdahl was able, let me see if I got it. Don't see it should have came up. Let me see. Yeah, and so he was able, he sailed from Africa, he sailed from Morocco to he had the first time he got almost to Barbados. He damn near got all the way the first time. But the boat broke up. The boat broke up, and so they tried it again the next year. Let me see if I got the ship. Here you go. Here you go right here. Well, that's him. That's Thor Heyerdahl. This is the ship. They built it outside of the pyramid. Now that's a reed. This is not even one of the wooden boats. It's a reed boat. You see what I'm saying? And that reed is strong than a motherfucker too. So don't get it twisted. That shit's strong. And so let me see. And so this is them out there on the river. And this is the Ra 2. This is the second one that they built. This is the one that made it all the way to Barbados. I think this is Ra 1, and I believe this one the motherfucker was breaking up. You see, so they had almost made it. You know, they had almost made it, but you know, they weren't successful that time. I had the maps for it, but let me see. Let me see if I got the maps for that to show how the distance. There you go. I just went past it. Here you go, right here. So you see right there, the Ra 1, they made it damn near 4.5 fifths of the way. They was almost there, but you know, you can see where it stopped right there. And then they came, that was in July 18th, 1969. And then they came right back to the next year, July 12th, 1970. They made it all the way to Barbados. They made it all the way to Barbados on the Ra 2, which is this ship right here. So I mean, come on now. That ain't even one of the that's not even the most one of the more advanced ones. You see what I'm saying? That's a smaller type. But that's not even one of the more advanced ones and shit. You know what I'm saying? And so that proves that the Egyptians could go, go to great lengths on the oceans and seas. They could go to great lengths on the oceans and seas. And so and at that time nobody else was on the seas. That we got to be understanding that these was the first peoples ever to have a navy, to create naval architecture. You see, hydrodynamic. Hydrodynamics. That's the term. You see, when you developing that hull to be able to move quicker. That's hydrodynamics. You got to have dynamic. Marine engineering and oceanography, mapping, you know, these areas. You see what I'm saying? Until you got confidence, you can move over the whole Mediterranean Sea and over the whole Red Sea. So, you know, the shocking size of the ancient Egyptian Navy, they got a lot of boats. And I'm gonna come back with a part 2 to show you that they had, maybe 20 different type of boats that people don't want to talk about. But I appreciate y'all being a member. Sarah Susan said the YouTube membership. Thank you, family, and stay with me because we're gonna have a lot more dynamic presentations just like this. Boom, Black Power.